Welcome to episode 74 of Eat, Drink, Write, an Urban Fantasy Whiteboard.
I know it only goes up once a week, but it's like, last week was 73, this week is 74. It still sounds like a lot every time you say the next number.
It is a lot. And I mean, so much that we have to go back and look and see if we've done topics on things before.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Hopefully y'all enjoy this and that it helps you.
I mean, I was looking at our downloads today and it looks like people enjoy it. So.
I think so. So we're going to talk about writing love interests, that archetype of the love interest, which I think is a good one to talk about. But before we get into that, how was your week?
It was good. It was very good, actually. So my girlfriend just defended, so she graduated with her master's degree. And so we have been celebrating that. And I've been working towards getting this paper done, and it's taken kind of a left turn. So that'll be some extra work for me this week, but hopefully I'll still be able to get it submitted. But no, it hasn't been a bad week. So it's a pretty decent, just work. Pretty typical work, school, that kind of thing. So pretty good.
Yeah, my week was good. I got a lot done. Coming back from Virginia, I dug in and got a lot of the work I needed to get done. So that felt good. We are getting new furniture for our deck. So that's exciting. Daughter number 3 with her designing background has designed a fire pit for us. So we've moved all of our furniture down there by the fire pit. And so yesterday we went out and bought a set of furniture for the deck. They're all gliders.
Oh my God. Well, that's perfect.
Every piece of that furniture moves.
You're just trying to get me to come home more often.
Definitely. You guys, all of my kids are moving people. They don't like to sit still. Mm-hmm. So we have a glider sofa, a glider love seat, and 2 gliding chairs.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So those will be delivered at some point this week. And
very cool.
then we're preparing for next week. We'll be on vacation and we will be podcasting in person on site in North Carolina.
That'll be very nice. Yeah.
So, and it's supposed to be chilly.
It is. It's supposed to be really cold. And we were looking at so my girlfriend and I were looking at the weather and it's supposed to like rain every day.
Yeah, I saw a lot of rain in there because I know y'all wanted to go hiking.
We did. And I don't know that it's going to happen if it's thunderstorming every day.
Yeah. What is fun is the hot tub with that kind of cold weather. That's
true.
Wonderful time.
That'll be lovely.
Play drinking games and
do absolutely.
Our podcasting, and
we got to teach you a few college games the last time we went on vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that'll be fun. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm worried about your Nana. I'm not sure when we're going to need to go back up. Your sister,
absolutely.
Your Aunt Debbie is leaving tomorrow.
Okay.
Nana says she's doing a lot better. I think her bone is finally starting to heal. Thank goodness.
Good. Well, she's not doing anything with it since she's had some help up there. So that's good.
So we'll just play that by ear. So at some point I may be podcasting from up there again.
Fair.
But for now, things, knock on wood, are pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are you eating and drinking?
Well, so I'm not eating yet. I'm not sure what we're going to do for eating. We've had all kinds of snacks this weekend because we've been celebrating. So I'm not sure about food. We'll probably grab dinner after this. And I'm not sure what it's going to be, but maybe I'll take a cool picture of it and we'll post it.
Okay.
But I am drinking a mimosa because we had champagne for a celebration. And so I've got a mimosa that was made by my lovely girlfriend. So
very, very nice.
Yeah.
I am drinking a Cosmopolitan and it's not super keto. I used a little bit of limeade, which has sugar in it, but I used one teaspoon and a splash of cranberry juice, lots of vodka. And then for the rest of it, I used the tangerine La Croix.
Ooh, that sounds good.
And it is very, very good. I don't
know. Sounds wonderful.
Normal people would like it because it might not be sweet enough for them. But for me, with my keto taste buds, I absolutely love it.
I actually like bitter drinks, so that's probably pretty decent.
Yeah, your dad's not a big fan of bitter drinks. He likes those really icky
He does
sweet
like the
ones.
sweet ones.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have jokes.
Oh, of course. I don't know how I forget this every week, but I do.
And of course, since we're talking about love interests, their relationship or love jokes.
Okay. All right.
And I may have already done this one once because it's such a dad joke. I might have used it before.
Sure.
Why should you never break up with a goalie?
Why?
Because he's a keeper.
That was cute. That was actually pretty adorable.
What did the patient with the broken leg say to the doctor?
What?
Hey, doc, I have a crutch on you.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah. Listen, I'm already tipsy. So I
See, these should be really funny to you. We need to encourage our listeners to be drinking while they listen to this show.
Oh, absolutely.
So that these are
Absolutely.
really funny.
Yes.
Don't break anybody's heart. They only have one. Break their bones. They have 206.
Yikes, that was just aggressive.
I thought it was pretty funny.
It was well, we do write urban fantasy, so
this is true. So tell us about love interest.
all right. So I'm going to start off with what I usually do, which is a brief definition of what is the love interest. And, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory, but I feel like most of the archetypes are as we, go by their titles or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is the character that the hero or your main character falls in love with. So it's the personification. I took this definition actually from one of our past episodes that we did on shoot, I can't remember anymore. But anyway, it's from one of our past episodes where we did building a relationship, I think.
Oh.
Or character archetypes, I think. We did an overview of character archetypes.
Okay.
So the love interest is the personification of the ideal mental and emotional balance that the writer hopes for the future of their protagonist.
Yeah, it's the story. It's the character whose role in the story is that of the lover or potential lover, or at least obsession to another character. It doesn't have to be the main character. You can have love interest between side characters, well as little subplots going on.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it's limited to main character at all.
I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah. The love interest is also often a big subplot to the main plot of your novel. You're mostly going to see this as, not the main plot, but as a subplot, especially if you're writing something like urban fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, for a romance novel, of course, it is the main plot.
Right. Yeah, of course.
But that's not what we're necessarily talking about here. I think that would be an entirely different episode because romance has its own little formulas that you have to use. So that romance is a different thing than what we're going to find in books where that's not the main goal of the story.
Definitely. Yeah.
The love interest is the device that an author uses to show the vulnerabilities and strengths of the protagonist. It's a great way to show character development by their interactions with their love interest.
That's a really good point because I delve into a lot of characterization with the research that I did for this today.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I summarized it very succinctly as that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So why include a love interest? Like, why are you going to bother having one at all?
Mm-hmm.
They're a character that reminds the reader that the main character is also human and has emotions like everyday people do too. A lot of people in the world have their significant others. They've had past relationships. They've delved into relationships with other people, romantic specifically.
They are, see the cute guy that works, on the second floor of their building every day. And real people have those interests.
Right. A lot of people do. Yeah. The love interest is also a character that can up the stakes of your novel. They can cause a lot of tension and a lot of conflict and a lot of whatever to up those stakes within your novel to make your reader more engaged with your story.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, with all its heart aching tension and the warm fuzzy feelings, a good love story can add a whole lot to your book. Mm-hmm. Without even having to be the overshadowing part of it.
Right.
It should help to develop your protagonist in the plot, but it doesn't necessarily drive the plot.
I think if it drives the plot, that's more of like a romance novel. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So does your story need a love interest? And need is the key word here. And I'm going to go ahead and just say no,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not. I don't think a story needs anything other than engagement with your reader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm going to follow up and say, well, not necessarily. You don't necessarily need one, but also you could have one. And the basis of this is just know your genre, know what your audience is going to expect based on that genre that you're writing. So, for example, a lot of the time, urban fantasy does have a love interest subplot. There is a romantic subplot in most of the urban fantasy, if not all, that I have read personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that urban fantasy is also a lot of action. So if you're writing, if even if you're not writing urban fantasy, if you've got like a lot of action and that's the basis of your story or horror or whatever, you can get away without having one. So don't worry if your story does not have a love interest. It's not a requirement by any means.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. In the Mercy Thompson books, you don't, in the very first book, it's not about the romantic relationships that she has no romantic relationships in the first book, but there are potentials out there.
Right. Because she's got
Um,
Sam and she's got
mhm,
Adam.
mhm,
I don't think she doesn't really think of Adam that way
mm-mm,
quite yet. But
mm-mm.
Sam has always been there because he was there when she was 16.
But in book one, he's not there that I remember. I mean, there's like 11, 12 of these
They're like 13 or something now. But yeah, no, he is in the first book because she takes an injured Adam to Aspen Creek to
Was
see
that the
him.
first book?
It was the very first book.
Darn.
Yeah, and so Sam does show up, and we get to hear all about how when she was 16, he was
Mm-hmm.
pursuing her and blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah. So, like, he's there from the beginning, and she's uncomfortable. And so, the audience is uncomfortable because she is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and all of that. But yeah, no, there's definitely the romantic element there, but she doesn't pursue it.
Yes.
It's not one of the subplots. So I think that's a great
Yeah.
example. You
Yeah.
don't
Because
have to have one.
it's, yeah, like you said, it's not even a plot at that point. It's just there are inklings there, but it's
It's more
nothing.
like background story
Yeah. Yeah.
for Mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, like you said, that's a good example of where you don't have to have that, depending on what your genre is. Now, if you're writing a historical romance, you better have romance in there and a love interest, because that's what your reader expects from that genre. So,
Yeah. No, exactly.
yeah.
So next I have types of love interest plots, which I thought would be really interesting to bring up for what I'm going to go over later, which is how to write your love interest. So there are lots of different types of love interests. Obviously your love interest is going to be a person too. After all, because we talk about this in episodes. Dad just popped up in the
I
video.
saw.
So I'm struggling to maintain my focus. But for those of you who are watching YouTube, you got a good glimpse of Dad.
Yeah.
But your love interest, this character that you're creating, is also a character. They're people too. They should have their own story. And I know we say that a lot about every type of character that we talk
Right.
about.
I mean, it's a true statement. So, yeah.
Right. But I think it's really interesting to think about where that love interest comes from. So, you could have the enemies to lovers thing, which is pretty popular in young adult right now.
Yeah. Where the two characters hate each other, but then end up falling in love at the end.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you've got friends to lovers, which is the opposite kind of.
Yeah. Romantic love interest is kind of the long-term love interest. It's more than sex. It's more than friendship.
Right.
It's more than the friends that they started with, and it's more than the lovers that they ended up with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then you've got love triangles, which we had a whole episode on.
Yep.
So if you're interested in learning about how to write love triangles, go listen to that.
Yeah, your favorite.
Yeah, if done well, it's not bad. I think I say that in that episode too. So
yeah, it's another big one for young adult.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then you've got like the star-crossed lovers, or like the ones that are fated. Like you've got fated mates. That's a big one in paranormal romance. I know.
Yeah, star-crossed like Romeo and Juliet, or fated like Cresley Cole's Immortals After Dark series.
Right.
With the urban fantasy or regular fantasy, that you get that fated thing a lot because of the mates. Werewolves have mates or vampires have mates. And it's not a bad thing. In fact,
No, not at all.
I love that. Cresley Cole is one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
Just be aware if you're going to do that, be aware of the stereotypes that are out there.
Right. Well, and I think it might be a stereotype in of itself. Like I
Right.
think fated mates is very much a stereotype at this point. It's been very much done in paranormal romance.
Which doesn't mean you can't do it. Just think about ways to switch it up.
To make it a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are also arranged relationships, arranged marriages and that kind of thing.
I had not even thought about that. That
Oh, yeah.
But that's a really good one. I think it's used a lot in the historical romance because that was a thing back then.
Yeah.
But think about in urban fantasies, the different cultures and monsters and that kind of thing that we're dealing with, the whole werewolf clans. Maybe that's how they do it. Maybe it is an arranged relationship, and that is going to be a big subplot of your novel. So I think that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that, but for urban fantasy and other fantasy books,
there's a lot of different, magical cultures that can go into it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then there's the love at first sight, quote unquote. Which honestly, with all of these different types of love interest plot lines that you can do, we could probably do a whole episode for each one of them.
That might not be a bad idea. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a lot of material there that we can work with. And my point in bringing them up here is to make sure that you guys know that, where you want your love interest stories to come from. How does your main character meet and fall in love with the love interest that you are creating for your story?
I like that idea. I think we should I think it would be helpful for our listeners to come up with examples of relationships because they might be wanting to have this love interest in there and they can't quite figure out, how do I have them meet? How do I
get them incorporated into the story that I created?
So I like that idea.
Yeah.
Also, just a point that the love interest isn't necessarily a love interest. I mean, like a lover or a romantic.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of love. Like, think of the love a parent has for their kid.
Yeah. Oh, that's very true.
And how they would do anything for that kid. So it could be that the love interest in your book is, that's at the heart of everything your main character does. If there's a threat facing your kid, that's going to motivate that character to do everything.
That's true. I actually didn't think about that as I was researching for this. That's a really, really good point. There are lots of different types of love that you can include in your story.
Yeah.
And I imagine we'll cover some of it at least with different character archetypes. Like the caregiver is going to be like a parent or like that kind of thing. But that is a really good point. Love isn't limited to romantic love.
Right. I mean, but you are going to have the sex love where it's all about the sex and, that kind of chemistry. And you're going to have the sweet romantic love where they might never have sex, but that passion is there, but they might never act on it.
Right.
So there's all kinds of different loves that you can play with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how can we actually go about creating this love and writing a love interest within your story? I got a lot of this information that I'm going to talk about today from wellstoried.com. It's a blog. They have a lot of great information on a lot of different topics. Go check them out because this was really informative and I really enjoyed reading everything that they had to say.
Okay.
So the first thing that you need to do is figure out the type of chemistry that you want in your novel. What's actually going to work for your story? How is it going to fit with your characters? And it kind of calls back to the types of plot lines that I was talking about, since, enemies to lovers will have a very different type of chemistry than friends to lovers would.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it happens by accident. Well, I'm a pantster, so take everything I say from that point of view.
Lots of writers are pantsters, though.
And I actually love that. To me, it's a thrill to write that way. It's when you have to go back and edit that the work comes in. The first draft where it's just, on its own is just so much fun. But my Kata's story, I had no intention of even having a romantic subplot or anything at all in that one.
I know how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, I threw them together and I had a whole different plan. Well, he still has his role. I don't know how to put this. I had an intention for him. He had a different purpose
Right.
in the
Not
book.
the love interest or whatever.
Correct. He had his own reason for being in the book. He was a needed character for a whole different reason.
Right.
But when I threw them together, the sparks just
They
flew.
just worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, what are you all doing?
Right,
um,
right.
but it works. And that's actually one of my favorite things about that book is
Yeah.
the way that their romance went. And I wouldn't say they were enemies to lovers, but they were definitely not at all on the
Friends.
same. Yeah, they weren't even friends. There was
Right.
just, they had their own purpose
Yeah.
and they just got stuck together, and
Yeah.
they happened to get stuck together, and so
Definitely. Yeah.
it grew. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I think from this chemistry thing, think about what draws the two characters that you have together. Do they share interests? Do they share experiences? Do they provide a balance for each other? I think it's all important to think about. All of those are different types of chemistry.
Hmm.
So think about where you want your chemistry to come from. Is it from a benign, very soothing, very happy place, or is it from like a passionate place where enemies to lovers might come in, and it might just be like, oh, well, I understand you because you've gone through this thing and I haven't. We've reacted to it differently.
The movie Speed? Do you remember that movie with
Yeah, with the bus,
Sandra
Keanu Reeves.
Bullock and
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves? Yeah,
yeah,
they weren't friends. They weren't enemies. They had no idea about each other, and the whole plot of the book wasn't their romance, but it was a
right.
definitely, so they were thrown in together, and it was
The
the
shared experience.
shared experience. And she even made a comment somewhere along the line in that movie about how relationships formed in these kind of chaotic moments don't necessarily last.
Right, right.
So, but yeah, I hadn't thought about that until you just said that.
Yeah. Also define your main character's romantic interests. And I think this is a really important one. You kind of have to know your main character inside out to really
Hmm.
understand what they might
Hmm.
need. Think
Yeah.
about what your main character needs out of this love interest character that you're trying to create.
Hmm.
So, what's going to go well with their personality? What'll fit their background? What's going to fit their mentality?
And then on the other side of that, think about what traits the love interest might have that are going to conflict with what your character needs or thinks he needs, or you know that attraction might be there, but you need to have conflict in order for the sparks to fly.
Right.
And so I was thinking in Kresley Cole's book, um, it was, I think, book 5, one of my favorite ones with the sorceress.
I am so impressed, first of all, that you remember it was book 5, because I'm pretty sure you're correct. It's either 5 or 6.
That was when I really got into the groove of her books. By book 5, I was totally hers.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was book 4, maybe 3, but I think 4 for me. I think it's 4 with the Phantom, whatever.
And
But
I
anyway,
love that too. But book 5, there was something about that one that really just spoke to me. I loved both characters.
yeah,
Um, but I had a reason for bringing there were several characters that he was very comfortable with.
yeah,
This woman was this outside character was the quote perfect mate for him, and his actual mate was totally opposite of what he in his mind thought that he needed,
right.
which was a really fun way to put that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he's supposed to be king, and he needs this regal woman, and he ends up with this little hothead that is a spitfire.
And I think arguably he needed someone who was a
Correct.
spitfire. So I think that worked out for him. Everyone else says, hey, you need someone who's prim and proper.
Right.
And he gets this spitfire sorceress who's like, I'm going to do whatever I want. And I'm also evil. So don't tell me what to do. I think that's what he needed. And I think that's the point is, think about what your main character needs, not what they're supposed to need.
Right. Which is what Kresley Cole, as the author, did. She knew, she did what you just said. Look about and think about what your character actually needs, not he didn't think he needed that,
Right.
but Kresley Cole knew that he needed that. And
Right.
so she wrote that. It was brilliant. You should read
Absolutely.
that series, everybody. I promise you'll love it.
It's very good. It's the Immortals After Dark series. So if
Yes.
you Google that, you'll be able to find it.
Hmm.
So I have few questions. I've been drinking a little bit, if you
Yeah,
haven't noticed.
just a little bit.
But I have a few questions for you to ask yourself as you're kind of trying to build this love interest, and they might kind of point you in the right direction of where to start building your love interest.
Okay.
So ask, what does my protagonist find attractive in a partner? Obviously, that's an important one. What kind of partner would bring my protagonist true happiness? Does my protagonist have any prejudices that would blind them to true love? And I think that's a really interesting one because you can create a lot of conflict, tension, etc. with that question.
Hmm.
What values does my protagonist hold dear? In what ways does my protagonist feel alone? And I think that's also a really interesting one. It's not one that I've really thought about in terms of creating love interests for my protagonists.
Hmm.
But it is an important one because if you feel alone, you obviously want the love interest to, negate that.
Right. Right.
What is my protagonist's biggest fear, flaw, or regret? What kind of love interest could challenge this fear, flaw, or regret? Do I want to utilize a specific romantic trope in my story, which is another important one that I talked about earlier. Pick what kind of chemistry you want. This trope is talking along the lines of like, what type of plot do you want? So enemies to lover is a trope.
Right.
Friends to lovers is a trope, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to mention this later, but I think it works better here.
Sure.
Um, Using your writer's journal is
Oh,
a
yeah.
great way. Go through those questions and write it out in your little writer's journal.
I do that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely this,
Yeah.
that will help you grow the not just the character that is the love interest, but what your main character needs. You can explore all of that within the confines of your journal to be able to put it into your book when you need to.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that you've been bringing up the writer's journal so much lately because I've been using mine a lot more lately too, just trying to write I'm trying to write like 5 different stories at the same time, but like 2 actively, I guess. And so keeping my writer's journal has been helping a lot with that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what my characters need and, do I want this love interest to be, for my protagonist and that kind of thing.
Definitely.
Also, as you're coming up with your love interest, give them autonomy. We run this point into the ground every single episode I think that we make at this point. But your love interest is also a character with their own story outside of the main character's life. So make sure that they have their own background, their own history, their own wants and needs, and give them their own fears and flaws and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think if you're one of those people that uses character sheets, Etsy has a bunch of them. You need to do that for all of your characters, not just the main character. Like we've said, you've got to develop all of the main characters. Didn't you have a chart where you had the conflicts?
Oh, I do. I should post that for our patrons at least.
Yeah. Because when you're looking at that chart, your love interest is a character too and needs to have conflict. How if this love interest isn't the best friend, how is the best friend and the love interest going to get along? Do they hate each other? What's their conflict?
Right.
That chart, we'll have to post that for
We'll post that.
our
I use a conflict chart, and it's specifically a conflict chart, but obviously the love interest is listed in it, and you're going to have conflict both with your main character and other characters in the story. And it's just a really good way to keep track of, the stakes that you have within a story. No, that's a really good point. I will have to get that posted.
Yes.
Make your love interest irreplaceable. I thought that this was a great tip because you need to give this character, it kind of falls in line with the autonomy. They are their own character, but you want to give them an importance just beyond being a love interest. Are they also the badass computer hacker? They, do they have knowledge on the occult that no one else does? That kind of thing. You want to make them a unique character that's important to the story on their own, not just as, oh, hey, the main character is supposed to fall in love with them.
Yeah, we talked about motivations, I think last week.
Right.
What motivations does the love interest have? What is it that makes them go? And
Right.
it could be that, yes, they might fall in love with the main character, but their motivation might say, I can't do that right now.
Right.
And that is a great thing for the readers to go, oh no, but you all are supposed to be together, and have to have that love interest go and do her own thing or his own thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was funny. As I was doing this episode, I actually had a really good idea for the next book of my Aiden series of where her love interest is going to actually approach her for help, because she, has her own story and her own reason for doing things. So
I
that
feel
was
like
really cool.
we're walking memes. The meme where you're writing the first book and you have an idea for book 557 down the road.
It's, honestly, it's exhausting.
And it's a real thing. I think
It
every
sure
writer
is.
gets it. Every writer
Absolutely.
understands that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Make sure your main character influences your love interest as much as the love interest influences your main character.
Yes.
So, I guess a better way to think about it is like relationships are a two-way street. Have the characters challenge each other, support each other, knock heads a little bit and set each other on their feet. Just like it's a real relation. They're real people, at least in your head. And you want them to be real people to your readers. So make them as realistic as possible. And real relationships are a two-way street.
I agree. I have 2 more points, and then that's everything. I think 2 more points.
Sure. Yeah.
Number one, we probably should do an episode on the different stereotypes of love interests. I came across one and now I can't remember what the word was, but it's apparently a thing, some kind of pixie something that's a 4-word.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking.
Manic pixie.
Yes.
Yeah, there's something. I don't remember it either, but there's something about it. Yeah.
So I feel like we should do some episodes with those stereotypes and come up with ideas for our listeners on how to twist them up and different ways to look at them and change them up a bit. And then number 2, I came across this and I didn't write down where I got it from, which I'm so sorry for whoever's blog this was that I got this from. A romantic subplot should have at least 4 plot points.
Oh, okay.
The meeting, the turning point, the crisis, and the resolution.
The revolution.
Could be a revolution.
A fight to love.
The meeting is, of course, when they meet, and it might be backstory because, they might already be friends, or it might be the meeting might be where they're actually meeting, like in Maikeda's story, they met for the first time at the very beginning of the book. The turning point is the moment where the love interest becomes aware of the main character's interest. This is going to change the dynamic of how they look at each other.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
When they both start realizing, there's something more
There's more
going on. Yeah. The dark moment or the crisis is that event that challenges that status quo, where they, they're like, okay, we're good. And then something happens that shakes that up. It's going to be the major conflict between those two characters on the romantic side, on the romance side of it.
Right.
Or whatever the love interest, whatever their relationship is.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the resolution is where they resolve it, which doesn't mean that they live happily ever after, if that's not the type of book you're writing. It just means that whatever that conflict between them resolved, it might be that they agreed to disagree and he or she moved
go
on.
their separate ways.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. No, those are all really good points. I didn't really think about, as much as I think about plotting my story, I never really thought about plotting the romantic subplot in terms of, 4 different points.
Yeah, that surprised me. I was like, I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
But that is kind of the formula for a romance novel.
Yeah.
The meeting,
definitely.
the turning point, the crisis, and the resolution.
That is true. Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense that you take a romance novel, and if it's a romantic subplot, that makes sense that it would be the same.
Just miniaturize it.
Just miniaturize it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I've got an interview question for you
Okie doke.
before we wrap up here. Who's your favorite love interest that you've written and why?
Hmm. I've actually written a romance, but I think the Kada story is my favorite simply because I had no plan for it.
Right.
It surprised me.
Yeah.
And their relationship is wonderful. I absolutely love it. And
Yeah.
so I think that is my favorite one that I've written because I would be writing along and I would just burst out laughing going, "Oh my God, did you really just say that?"
Yeah.
And you know, my main character is going, "What? Really?" And
Right.
I just absolutely love that relationship because it was something I did not expect. They did it themselves.
Absolutely.
What
Yeah.
about you?
I have um a similar one with Mac and her love interest.
Mm-hmm.
He was always planned to be like a skeevy, creepy, don't like him kind of dude. And he turned himself into, he was like, no, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
creepy. Excuse you. I'm flirty. And I was like, okay, that doesn't mean you're not creepy. And he's like, no, 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 but like, watch. And I was like, okay.
Uh-huh.
And he was pretty cool. So I really enjoyed Monroe for Mac. He's a lot of fun to write. He writes himself. He's very much like a listen. I know you had this vision of me. That's not what it is. I really enjoy my Louie and Delaney book.
Mm-hmm.
They're teaching each other how to love, and that's like
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite things. So they're actually probably my favorite love interests.
I,
Um,
I do like the love interest in Frickin' Fairies.
yeah,
Just I kind of knew it was coming. It was, that one was more planned than the Kada story.
right,
But
right,
it doesn't mean it's not fun. And I do love
yeah,
him. He's hilarious. He
yeah.
he he gets really offended when she compares him to the elves on the Lord of the Rings.
Well, I mean, listen, he deserves a little
Uh-huh.
piggyback.
He does because he's all high and mighty, and she comes
Hmm.
in just totally mortal and blows his world apart. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, neat. Yeah, I also love Taryn, who is your Kata story.
Mm-hmm.
He's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a sentence challenge for anybody who's interested in doing those. Basically, use this sentence that I give you in a page scene or however long you want it to be. It doesn't really matter. I limit it to a page just to challenge myself, but it's up to you. And the sentence for today is it's like it was love at first sight or something.
I like that.
So good luck with putting that into a little mini story.
Yeah, I
And feel
like
free to
that.
send it to us.
Yeah,
We would love to read it.
absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to hear from all of you guys. Definitely open to doing any kind of topics that you want to. I do find a lot of the topics off of Twitter, the writing community, where I see people questioning, and I'm like, oh, well, there's our next topic.
Yep.
So let us know that. Come check us out at our website, eatdrinkwritepodcast.com.
Yes.
Come support us at our Patreon, patreon.com/EDW. It does take time, effort, and money to do this.
We're
Um,
also happy to post all of our own, our personal ways of doing things. I've posted
mhm.
a PowerPoint about making timelines for your novels, and we're going to post something about a conflict sheet. So.
Yeah, thank you to Jen and Deanna for your continued support. We really, really appreciate it. Hopefully, we're
Absolutely.
helping you out with with our topics. And thank you, Deanna has been giving us some topics lately, and
Yeah.
Jen
Yeah.
has as well. So thank you for that. And I guess we will see you next time, which I think will be live and together in North Carolina.
I believe so. All
Okay.
right. Thanks, guys.